Thanks for letting me join you. I feel like I'm amongst friends here. I saw Paul Roberts, who's done such great work up in Snohomish. I just shook hands with a guy named Steve Lundeen. Steve, raise your hand. I want to make sure. So Steve has got some great books about city government, and he is my absolute #1 hero in Washington State government, because the first time I came to our state capitol as a young lawyer, I came to argue a case in front of the state Supreme Court. And I drove over from Yakima, and it was a big deal. I was a young buck lawyer and came over for my first, presentation to the state capitol, and got up that morning and practiced my speech and got all ready, put on my fancy three-piece, pinstripe suit to go to the state Supreme Court, and realized that I'd forgotten my shoes in Yakima. And all I had were white tennis shoes to argue in front of the Supreme Court. This great leader of municipal government, Steve Lundeen, lent me black shoes for my first Supreme Court. So Steve, I want to thank you for your work. That's the type of innovative leadership that we get from local governments and mayors and city council people. And we do have a lot of leadership in this room, and it's something that I admire and respect. And I start with education, even though local governments may not, I understand I'm not talking to the school board members here, but I think we understand that your criminal justice budget and your social service budget can be helped by having the best education system we can possibly have. So I look at everybody in leadership capacity as, by necessity, being educational leaders this year. Now, we know when we do produce great Washingtonians with great skills, what happens? We create great businesses and great economic development. And it has been a joy for me in the first couple years being governor of attending a lot of ribbon cuttings where we have seen economic growth across the state of Washington. In Moses Lake, at Oster Real's manufacturing plant, where they're producing a powerful antioxidant, growing algae and cutting-edge photobioreactors. These are a world-class technology in Moses Lake, Washington. In Spokane at Aeroflight, where we've moved this great firefighting enterprise to have their bases in Spokane. While we make the state investment in education, we hope we'll find ways to help cities and schools work today. We know families in our communities also need vital services today outside of the classroom. Nursing, mental health facility, chemical dependency services, police officers, and firefighters. Now, as you know all too well, our state has been cutting support for those basic governmental services for too long. Over the last 6 years, we've cut existing and projected spending in our state by $12 billion. And you are the folks who've been feeling that where the rubber meets the road. Now, I'm also committed to getting a transportation plan done this year. And we know how important this is. And I've been advocating that since literally my first hour or two in office. We know the House has passed a bill a year or so ago. It's good to see a recent release of a Senate's transportation idea. I think it's good news that it can spark further interest in moving a transportation bill forward. Now, we know the #1 challenge facing the legislature this session also happens to be the #1 challenge facing local government leaders. And that's inadequate revenue to finance the basic services that we owe the people of the state of Washington. In the past year, this is where the legislature turned, which is to ask you to make sacrifices in your budgets to solve that problem. Instead, my budget has provided $70 million for the Public Works Trust Fund and doesn't use the money for the operating budget because I think we need to invest in our communities, and I know how important this fund is to do that. My budget also makes no reductions in state shared revenues to cities, because I know you depend on this for your city criminal justice assistance, your streamlined sales tax mitigation, and the annexation sales tax credit to balance your own budgets. And as noted, I've proposed sharing 10% of the marijuana revenue with the communities that are opening themselves to this new legal markets, because I think we can partner, need to partner together through this complex transition. I'm aware of the costs that you are involved in making that transition. And so we know cuts alone can't do the job. Those days really are over. The hollowing out of our state, those days are over. Efficiencies alone will not balance our budget. We're saving money today. We're improving customer service through efficiencies, and we need to continue that good work, and I see it all across the state of Washington. But it's not enough. We're going to need new revenue. I believe legislators will reach that conclusion ultimately in a bipartisan basis once they acquaint themselves with the real numbers that face us. In sum, before I stand for your easy questions, I want to tell you that I'm optimistic about this year. I think we're going to get a good bipartisan budget eventually. I think it's going to fund education. I think it's going to help some of our local governments. I look forward to doing some big things here.